Pregnant wife sees Millionaire bring Mistress home. She turns away in fury while he panics. High above the bustling streets of Manhattan, two lives poised on the brink of collapse and betrayal. For years, Damon Blackwood ruled his world with wealth, charm, and an impenetrable facade that shielded him from the consequences of his own desires. His wife, Eleanor Martin Blackwood, clung to the belief that true love could triumph over social divides and ruthless ambition. Yet tonight, all illusions shatter. Damon escorts his stunning mistress into the very home Eleanor once believed was her sanctuary. Flames of fury spark in Elena's eyes as she turns away, leaving Damon frozen in panic. In that instant, everything changes forever. Elena Martin was never supposed to marry a millionaire. Raised in a modest household on the outskirts of Queens, she learned the value of hard work and the importance of family bonds. Her father, Gabriel Martin, was a school bus driver, and her mother, Lucia, made ends meet by working at a local bakery. Money was scarce, but affection and mutual support were abundant. Elena's childhood was filled with simple joys, playing hopscotch on cracked sidewalks, sharing homemade empanadas with neighbors, and dreaming about one day becoming an artist or a teacher, anything that could serve her community. Damon Blackwood's world was the polar opposite. Born into old money with deep roots in Manhattan's social elite, he attended prestigious prep schools, flew around the world in private jets, and viewed success as an expectation rather than a goal. Though the Blackwood fortune originated from real estate, Damon expanded it through daring tech investments in Silicon Valley. By 30, he had multiplied his inheritance several times over, gaining a reputation for both cunning and charm. Their paths first crossed at a charity fundraiser organized by the Friedman Foundation, a philanthropic event aimed at funding educational scholarships for underprivileged kids. Elena had volunteered to help with event logistics, hoping her bilingual skills could be of use. She believed passionately in giving back to the children whose struggles mirrored her own humble beginnings. Damon attended as one of the top donors, breezing in with his trademark confidence. The two collided, literally, when Eleanor stumbled while carrying a tray of drinks. Glass shattered at Damon's feet. Instead of berating her, he knelt to help clean up, surprising everyone present. In that moment, Eleanor saw not a ruthless millionaire, but a man capable of genuine kindness. Conversation flowed effortlessly once the awkwardness passed. He teased her about how fate apparently wanted them to meet. She felt an unexplainable spark that neither had ever experienced before. Within weeks, Damon pursued Elena with a laser-like focus. Lavish dinners, thoughtful gifts, long walks in Central Park. He presented himself as a man yearning for a deeper connection than the superficial relationships he had known. Although Elena felt uneasy about the drastic difference in their worlds, she couldn't deny her growing affection for him. He promised that love mattered more than any gap in status or bank accounts. Against her family's cautious advice, she allowed herself to be swept up in the whirlwind romance. When Damon proposed under a starlit sky on the deck of a yacht, complete with a diamond ring that dwarfed anything Elena had imagined, she said yes, tears of joy streaming down her face. She believed wholeheartedly in the fairy tale that their love was a bridge strong enough to unite two vastly different backgrounds. Even Damon's mother, Beatrice Blackwood, who wore disapproval like a second skin, seemed grudgingly resigned to the union. For a moment it felt like Elena had truly found her own happily ever after. Little did she know how quickly illusions can crumble when tested by ambition, temptation, and the secrets of a man whose heart might not be as pure as she once believed. After the fairy tale wedding, a grand affair at the Blackwood estate overlooking the Hudson, Elena moved into Damon's luxurious penthouse in Midtown Manhattan. The building itself was a fortress of gleaming glass and steel, symbolizing everything Elena's old life was not. At first, she felt awed by the high ceilings, panoramic city views, and state-of-the-art security. But soon, her wonder gave way to an unsettling sensation of being trapped in a gilded cage. Life as Mrs. Damon Blackwood brought immediate notoriety. Paparazzi snapped photos whenever she emerged from the penthouse. Tabloids speculated about her humble background and how lucky she was to snag a billionaire husband. Elena tried to shrug off the gossip, focusing on her volunteer work at local community centers. She aimed to bring resources and hope to kids in struggling neighborhoods, kids like she once was. Yet, beneath the surface, she struggled to adapt to her new status. Damon, meanwhile, worked tirelessly, expanding his empire. He spent his days in high-stakes boardrooms and nights at exclusive soirees with entrepreneurs, movie stars and politicians. Early on, Elena joined him at these events, wearing designer gowns he purchased for her. Though she dazzled in these dresses, inside she felt like an imposter. She endured pointed stares from other socialites, such as Bianca Friedman, heiress to Friedman Associates, who always found a way to belittle Elena with backhanded compliments about her modest origins. At home, Damon often seemed affectionate but distant. He would praise Elena's charitable endeavors, claiming her kindness inspired him. Yet his phone buzzed constantly with texts and emails. Business deals demanded attention at all hours. On nights when Damon was away, Elena roamed the cavernous penthouse alone, her footsteps echoing on marble floors. She missed the laughter of her close-knit family, the warmth of her tiny childhood apartment. Confronted by her growing loneliness, Elena suggested they plan a simpler lifestyle or spend more time out of the public eye. Damon nodded absently, promising to schedule a quiet weekend getaway. But the weekend never came. Each time something urgent, an investor meeting, a conference in Tokyo, stole his attention. Gradually, a sense of disconnection seeped into their marriage. Damon's nights grew longer, his business trips more frequent. He would return with lavish gifts, a necklace from Tiffany's, a limited edition handbag, and a quick apology. Elena tried to accept these gestures, but deep down she yearned for conversation, shared laughter, and genuine intimacy. She tried to talk to him about starting a family, about building something beyond financial conquests. Damon deflected the topic, insisting it wasn't the right time. Rumors started circulating in hush-hush corners of Manhattan society, whispers that Damon was seen flirting at upscale clubs, spotted with an unfamiliar woman at a private lounge. Elena brushed them off as malicious lies. She had glimpsed Damon's capacity for kindness. She clung to the belief that he wouldn't betray her. Yet a nagging doubt lodged in her heart. In the swirl of glitz and glam, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that the foundation of their love story wasn't as solid as she had once believed. Cracks were forming, subtle but dangerous. She did her best to ignore them, trusting that Damon's love would prevail. Little did she know, the storms gathering around her would soon become impossible to ignore. The first time Elena saw an explicit sign of Damon's drifting loyalty was at a high-profile charity gala hosted by the Friedman Foundation. She had attended to support Damon's philanthropic commitments, even though she felt out of place among the city's wealthiest elites. Dressed in an elegant emerald gown, Elena tried to navigate the sea of privileged guests, looking for Damon, who had slipped away to speak with potential investors. A hush swept the crowd near one corner of the ballroom as a stunning woman in a glittering silver dress made her entrance. Tall, with cascading auburn hair, she radiated confidence. Whispers identified her as Bianca Friedman's friend, Sienna Tremont, a rising figure in the fashion world. Though Eleanor had heard Sienna's name in passing, she never expected the woman to carry such an aura of effortless seduction. Moments later, Eleanor spotted Damon across the room, engaged in a seemingly intimate discussion with Sienna. The pair stood close, and Damon's hand lingered on Sienna's arm in a way that felt too familiar. A wave of jealousy and confusion crashed over Elena. She tried to approach, but was intercepted by an elderly patron wanting to discuss the charity's cause. By the time she excused herself, Damon and Sienna had moved elsewhere. Throughout the evening, Eleanor caught glimpses of them, laughing together at the champagne bar, exchanging phone numbers in a subtle but telling motion. Her heart sank each time. She longed to confront Damon, but part of her feared causing a scene that tabloids would devour. She vowed to speak with him once they returned home. However, as typical of these events, Damon arrived back at the penthouse well past midnight. He claimed urgent business had kept him, avoiding her eyes when she inquired about Sienna. Days turned into weeks, and Elena's suspicions mounted. Late-night phone calls and unexplained outings became common. Damon's usual excuses. "It's a business dinner. We're brainstorming a collaboration with a fashion label," did little to soothe her anxieties. A swirl of discontent settled within Elena, but she remained hesitant to accuse Damon without undeniable proof. She remembered her humble roots, the vow to trust her husband. Could she really stand up to him in a confrontation? Meanwhile, Sienna Tremont's name started appearing in gossip columns as the new darling of Manhattan's fashion circles. Leaks suggested she was seeking investors for her brand, possibly involving Damon's wealth. Whenever Eleanor asked about these rumors, Damon brushed them off. "Sienna's just a contact. There's nothing personal," he insisted, though tension laced his voice. In private, Elena poured her turmoil into journaling, capturing each pang of fear, each flicker of heartbreak. She confided in no one, partly out of shame, partly because she feared people would label her the jealous, poor wife who couldn't handle the high society pressure. She attempted to hold on to faith that Damon wouldn't betray her so blatantly. Yet the seeds of doubt had been planted, and they grew daily under the shadow of temptation. Elena tried to remember the man who once knelt to help her pick up shattered glass at a fundraiser, who once spoke passionately about bridging social divides. Where had that Damon disappeared to? She feared that if she didn't act soon, she would lose the chance to save their fractured marriage before it slipped entirely into the shadows. The tension between Elena and Damon escalated until it erupted one rainy evening. Damon returned late from a supposed business dinner, reeking of perfume and carrying a faint lipstick mark on his shirt collar. Elena noticed immediately, her heart pounding in dread. She asked calmly about his evening. He gave a clipped response. "Meetings ran over, that's all." Unable to contain her alarm, Elena pressed further. "Why is there lipstick on your collar?" "Damon, I can smell the perfume. Please just tell me the truth." His face tightened. A flash of irritation crossed his features. "You're imagining things. Some colleague might have greeted me with a hug." "Stop making accusations." Elena trembled with anger and heartbreak. "I'm not blind, Damon. You're never home. You're evasive every time Sienna's name comes up. I can't ignore this anymore." He glared, shrugging off his suit jacket. "Sienna's just a potential business partner. I invest in new brands. That's my job. Don't twist it into something else." Their argument spiraled, voices echoing in the penthouse's marble corridors. Elena demanded honesty. Damon accused her of paranoia. She pleaded for him to recall the love that once bonded them. He scorned her lack of understanding about his obligations. Eleanor tried to keep her tears at bay, but they spilled over, fueled by frustration at his deflections. Eventually, Damon stalked off to the guest bedroom, slamming the door. Elena sank onto the living room couch, exhausted by the confrontation. She realized that her words had scarcely made a dent in his resolve to hide the truth. If he was cheating, he'd go to great lengths to deny it. If he wasn't, he offered no real comfort or reassurance. In the days that followed, Damon showered her with gifts. A diamond bracelet, an extravagant bouquet delivered with an apology note. Yet, the intangible distance remained. He never properly addressed her concerns. Each day, Eleanor felt more isolated, trapped in a marriage that had become a labyrinth of half-truths and cold silences. Desperate for an ally, she reached out to her close friend, Carmen Lopez, a fellow volunteer from the community center. Over coffee in a tiny cafe, Elena confessed her suspicions and heartbreak. Carmen listened intently, her brow creased with sympathy. "You have to protect yourself, Elena. If Damon is crossing lines, you need a plan. Don't let him reduce you to just a pawn in his world." Elena nodded, tears brimming. She admitted how lonely she felt in the penthouse, how uncertain she was about her future. Carmen urged her to gather evidence if she suspected an affair. "You deserve the truth," Carmen insisted gently, "and if he's lying, you deserve better." That night, Elena hovered near the bedroom window, staring out at Manhattan's glimmering skyline. The city lights once felt magical, symbolizing a grand new life. Now they seemed harsh and distant, mocking her naivety. She silently prayed for Damon to come clean, or to show her a shred of genuine love. But the penthouse halls echoed with emptiness long after midnight. A storm was brewing. Elena sensed it in every fiber. One more push, one more blatant betrayal, and everything might come crashing down. She wasn't sure if she had the strength to confront that reality. But events were in motion, and the tipping point was closer than she imagined. Elena's chance to confirm her worst fears arrived unexpectedly. One afternoon, while tidying Damon's home office, she discovered a slip of paper tucked between the pages of a business ledger. At first glance, it looked like an invoice, but upon closer inspection, it revealed a hotel reservation in Damon's name, 2 nights at an upscale boutique hotel in Midtown, with an arrival date just 1 week away. The occupant's name read Damon Blackwood +1, with a special request for a suite with a private hot tub. Her stomach clenched. Damon had not mentioned any upcoming trip, let alone an overnight stay in the same city where they lived. If it was a legitimate business transaction, why hide it in a random ledger? Elena's mind whirled. She took a photo of the reservation with her phone, her hands trembling. This was the closest thing she had to proof that Damon planned a rendezvous, quite possibly with Sienna Tremont. That evening, Eleanor confronted Damon with the slip of paper. He froze, then attempted to explain it away as a surprise getaway for them both. But his words lacked conviction. He didn't even try to feign excitement for a romantic weekend together. Elena demanded to see details. Did he book a spa treatment for them or dinner reservations? He stuttered, stumbling through half-baked justifications until finally snapping that he didn't need to defend his actions to her. Shaken, Elena retreated to her room, realizing that Damon's deceit was more brazen than she had feared. The next day, she confided in Carmen, who suggested that Eleanor see for herself who Damon planned to meet at that hotel. The notion of surveillance made Eleanor uneasy, but she felt cornered. If she was to salvage her dignity or gain the clarity needed to walk away, she had to be certain of Damon's betrayal. A plan took shape. On the day of the reservation, Eleanor told Damon she was volunteering at the community center all evening. Meanwhile, she dressed in inconspicuous clothes, a hat pulled low, and positioned herself in the hotel lobby a couple of hours before the check-in time. With her heart hammering against her ribcage, she waited, fighting the urge to flee. Carmen, always supportive, agreed to keep her phone line open in case Elena needed backup. Sure enough, as the clock neared 6, Damon arrived at the hotel's grand entrance. He stepped out of a sleek black car, scanning the surroundings. Then, from the opposite side, Sienna Tremont emerged, carrying a designer handbag and wearing a triumphant smile. They exchanged a brief kiss, witnessed only by a few bystanders who likely had no idea who they were. But Elena saw it all from behind a marble column, tears burning her eyes as every last illusion shattered. Sienna, with her model-like poise, linked her arm through Damon's as they strode toward the elevator. Elena captured photos on her phone, her hand trembling so violently she nearly dropped the device. She felt nauseated, outraged, humiliated, but a newfound resolve ignited within her as well. This was it. Damon had chosen to flaunt his affair openly, no longer bothering with vague denials. Elena left the hotel, her stomach in knots, wondering how she could ever face Damon again. One thing was certain: the life she had accepted, the illusions she had clung to, were gone. She could not simply confront him with accusations in private this time. He had made a deliberate choice to discard her trust, and the fury she felt now was matched only by the heartbreak pulsing deep within her. Eleanor spent a sleepless night in anguish, replaying the image of Damon and Sienna walking arm in arm into that hotel suite. Her tears dried into an implacable resolve by dawn. She realized she was done tolerating half-truths and false promises. If Damon wanted to destroy their marriage, he would not do it secretly. She would make him face the consequences. By midday, Eleanor forced herself to attend a scheduled volunteer shift at the community center, clinging to normalcy. The children's laughter offered a brief respite from the swirling storm of betrayal. But behind every smile she gave them, a fire burned. She phoned her father, Gabriel, seeking comfort. His gentle voice reminded her that she was strong, that she deserved more than scraps of affection. She didn't confide the full truth, only that she was going through a marital crisis. Gabriel sensed her pain, but did not press her for details, knowing she'd speak when ready. After her shift, she walked through the city aimlessly, letting her footsteps guide her. Hours later, she found herself outside Damon's penthouse building. The doorman greeted her politely, but she noticed his sympathetic expression. Word traveled quickly among staff. They likely suspected trouble in the marriage. Elena entered the elevator, heart pounding with adrenaline. Fate orchestrated a dramatic turn. As she stepped into the penthouse, she heard laughter echoing from the living room. Her stomach flipped in rage. Is he entertaining someone? She thought. Quietly, she removed her shoes, creeping forward until she saw them, Damon and Sienna, perched on the leather sofa, glasses of wine in hand. Time seemed to slow. Sienna wore a smug expression, her slender legs draped over the coffee table as if she owned the place. Damon, noticing Elena first, bolted upright, nearly spilling his wine. Sienna turned, an arched eyebrow rising when she spotted Elena. The tension crackled like electricity. "Elena," Damon stammered, "this isn't—" But Elena couldn't bear another lie. She locked eyes with Sienna, who merely sipped her wine, unashamed. White-hot fury coursed through Elena's veins. This woman had invaded her home, stolen her husband's time and loyalty, and for what? Money? Status? Sienna opened her mouth, perhaps to deliver a condescending remark, but Elena raised her hand, voice trembling with anger. "Don't! Just don't!" She turned to Damon, who stood frozen, panic evident in his eyes. "You brought her here?" Elena spat, her voice cracking. "Into the home we share? After everything?" Damon's face paled. He glanced helplessly from Sienna to Elena. "It's not what it looks like," he began feebly. Elena let out a short, bitter laugh. "Tell me, Damon, how am I supposed to interpret you entertaining your mistress in my living room?" She felt tears threaten to surface, but fury held them at bay. "I'm done with your lies." Sienna rose smoothly, setting her wineglass aside. She brushed off an imaginary speck of dust from her designer blouse. "Perhaps I should leave," she said, feigning politeness, but the glimmer in her eyes suggested victory. Elena stepped back, too disgusted to engage further. She turned on her heel and headed for the door. Damon rushed after her, calling her name, but she jerked away. "Don't touch me," she hissed, voice cracking from the depth of her hurt. Then she fled, leaving Damon standing there, face etched in guilt and panic. In that moment, Elena realized she could never erase the image of Sienna's triumphant smirk, nor forgive Damon for this ultimate betrayal. The penthouse door slammed shut, echoing the final chord in their grand facade of a marriage. She vowed never to let him see her crumble again. Her tears would be private, and her next move would be fueled by her own sense of worth. Eleanor stumbled onto the bustling Manhattan sidewalk, her vision blurred by tears she refused to shed in front of Damon and Sienna. Horns blared, neon signs flashed, but she felt disconnected from everything around her. Her mind replayed Damon's panicked face. Was that remorse, or simply fear of being caught? She needed to breathe. She needed refuge. Clutching her purse, she hailed a taxi and directed the driver to Carmen's apartment in a working-class neighborhood near Elmhurst. Her heart pounded throughout the entire ride, her fury morphing into heartbreak. By the time the taxi reached Carmen's place, Elena was trembling. Carmen welcomed her with open arms, quickly ushering her inside to the small living room. "What happened?" she asked, her dark eyes flashing concern. Elena's composure cracked. She recounted how she walked in on Damon hosting Sienna in her own home. The recounting felt surreal, like describing a scene from a melodramatic soap opera. Carmen's face hardened with protective anger. She rubbed Elena's shoulders, offering tissues and warm tea. Finally, when Elena's shaking subsided, Carmen said calmly, "You can stay here as long as you need. We'll figure this out together." Days blurred into a haze of sorrow. Elena refused to answer Damon's calls or texts, ignoring each frantic attempt at apology. He left voicemail after voicemail, claiming it was a misunderstanding, that Sienna dropped by uninvited and nothing had happened. Elena barely had the energy to scoff at these excuses. Sienna's presence, the intimacy of the setting, she wasn't a random visitor. Meanwhile, tabloids picked up hints of a scandal. Paparazzi noticed Elena missing from Damon's arm at a major charity event. Columnists speculated about marital discord. She dreaded the inevitability of her heartbreak becoming gossip fodder. But some shred of dignity remained. She hadn't publicly acknowledged Damon's infidelity yet, and part of her debated whether she should. The thought of their private agony becoming citywide entertainment sickened her. Amid the turmoil, Elena's father called repeatedly, worried by her abrupt disappearance from the penthouse. She struggled to maintain a brave front, explaining only that she needed some space. Gabriel sensed his daughter was in deep pain, but understood her reluctance to voice the entire truth over the phone. "Come home if you need to," he said, voice filled with paternal warmth. "We're always here for you." Late one night, Elena sat at Carmen's modest kitchen table, rummaging through the memories of her life with Damon. Photos from the early days, smiling shots on romantic getaways, images of them dancing at galas, lay scattered across her phone. She knew that behind the glamorous veneer, their relationship had rotted from within. Perhaps she had tried too hard to bridge their worlds, ignoring the cracks that formed from greed and ambition. Carmen encouraged her to seek legal advice, reminding Elena that she wasn't just dealing with heartbreak, but also entangled finances. Elena, however, felt overwhelmed. She wasn't ready to talk to lawyers, to brandish lawsuits or public scandal. Part of her still clung to the faint hope that Damon might see reason, might remember the love that once united them. But with each passing hour, that hope dimmed. The only clear truth she had now was that her old life was over. The penthouse, the high society illusions, the unconditional trust, gone. In the vacuum left behind, a seed of determination sprouted. She would not be a silent victim in this story. Whether Damon tried to salvage their marriage or not, she needed to reclaim her own identity. Because if she waited for him to define her worth, she would be forever lost in the shadows of his betrayal. While Elena found sanctuary with Carmen, Damon Blackwood faced a maelstrom of guilt and fear within the penthouse's hollow walls. Sienna Tremont had left soon after Elena's dramatic departure, casually remarking that she wasn't here for drama. As the door shut behind her, Damon felt an immediate wave of regret. He collapsed onto the sofa, burying his head in his hands. His phone calls to Elena went unanswered. Texts apologizing, offering to talk, went unread. He discovered her clothing gone, personal items missing. It dawned on him that this time Eleanor wouldn't be easily pacified by lavish gifts or shallow excuses. The entire situation was a pit he'd dug for himself, lured by Sienna's allure and the twisted excitement of conquest. In an attempt to reclaim control, Damon phoned his longtime friend and lawyer, Christian Friedman, a cousin to Bianca Friedman and a discreet confidant. Over a tense dinner at a private club, Damon poured out the situation. He sought legal advice on protecting his assets if Elena filed for divorce. Christian raised a brow. "You should be more worried about repairing your marriage, Damon." "Elena has every right to be furious." Damon slammed a fist on the table, sending cutlery rattling. "I know, but I can't lose everything. She might come after me for half my fortune." Christian shook his head, disappointment etched on his features. "Don't reduce her to a gold digger. Elena's not like that. You messed up. You might want to approach this with humility." For the first time, Damon realized he risked losing more than money. The image of Elena's tear-filled eyes haunted him. He recalled how she once lit up whenever he entered a room, how her laughter resonated through the penthouse when they shared quiet nights. He had believed his wealth and status shielded him from consequences, but now he stood on the brink of losing the one person who had loved him sincerely. In desperation, Damon made a grand gesture, showing up at the community center where Elena volunteered. He tried to corner her after a children's event, but Carmen barred his way. "She doesn't want to see you," Carmen hissed, eyes blazing. "Stay away until you learn respect." Damon left, humiliated and strangely bereft. He wandered Manhattan, drifting through the same streets Elena once took him on to meet her old friends. He visited a small diner where they had shared late-night pancakes in the early days of dating, only to find everything overshadowed by memories of her warmth. Returning to the penthouse that night, Damon found it emptier than ever. The room still smelled faintly of Elena's floral perfume, a silent reminder of her presence that now mocked his isolation. Sienna tried calling, but Damon couldn't bear to talk to the woman who symbolized his betrayal. He let her calls go to voicemail. Alone in the darkness, Damon felt a pang of regret so sharp it almost suffocated him. He had always prided himself on being a master deal-maker, skillfully maneuvering through business and social circles. But in matters of the heart, he realized he was a fool, undone by vanity and impulse. Now, unless he found a way to atone, Elena might slip away forever, and for the first time, the billionaire who once seemed invincible tasted the bitterness of helplessness. Elena's father, Gabriel Martin, arrived in the city unannounced one afternoon. He knocked gently on Carmen's apartment door. Elena opened it, shocked to see him standing there in his worn flannel shirt, lines of worry etched deeply across his brow. She threw her arms around him, fresh tears welling up as she breathed in the comforting scent of home. Gabriel held her close, murmuring that he'd come because he sensed how badly she needed him. Over cups of chamomile tea in Carmen's cozy kitchen, Elena finally shared the full story. Damon's blatant affair, the heartbreak of discovering him with Sienna, the humiliating confrontation in her own living room. Gabriel listened quietly, his gentle gaze never leaving his daughter's face. Though rage flickered in his eyes at what Damon had done, he remained a steady pillar, focusing on supporting Elena rather than venting anger. Gabriel suggested they drive upstate for a few days, away from the city's noise and tabloids. Carmen seconded the idea, offering to keep Elena's belongings safe if she needed a break. Elena hesitated, unsure if running away would solve anything. But the weight of the city pressed down on her. In a moment of weakness, she agreed, craving the peace of simpler surroundings. They headed to a small lakeside cabin a family friend had lent them, nestled in the quiet hush of pine trees. For the first time in weeks, Elena slept without nightmares. Each morning she strolled by the water, letting the stillness ease her heart. Gabriel accompanied her, occasionally sharing stories from her childhood, an attempt to remind her of her resilience. She found comfort in his unwavering love, though her mind still churned with unresolved questions about her marriage. Midweek, Carmen called, updating Elena about Damon's repeated attempts to contact her. He'd even shown up at the community center again, bearing a donation check and requesting a conversation. Carmen refused to give him Elena's whereabouts. She told Elena that Damon's eyes were haunted, that he seemed truly remorseful. "It's your call," Carmen reminded, "but if you want closure, eventually you'll have to face him." Elena appreciated Carmen's honesty. She realized she couldn't hide in the woods forever. If she was to decide her future, be it divorce or an attempt at reconciliation, she had to speak to Damon. Yet the prospect filled her with dread. She still loved the man she once believed him to be, but that man had seemingly evaporated. In his place stood someone who had shattered her heart. Before returning to Manhattan, Eleanor confided in Gabriel that she was torn about whether to give Damon another chance. Her father sighed, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Only you know if there's enough trust left to rebuild. But never forget your worth, Mihija. You can stand on your own 2 feet. You don't need his money or his pity." His words resonated deeply. Elena resolved that if she confronted Damon, it would be on her terms, with no illusions about wealth or status. She would not be reduced to the poor wife, who had to grovel for acceptance. Instead, she would decide if he was worthy of stepping back into her life at all. A fierce clarity ignited within her, one that promised the next step in this drama would be hers to dictate. Elena returned to Carmen's apartment after her brief respite upstate. A calm resolve anchored her steps as she set her suitcase by the living room couch. She discovered a letter waiting for her, a formal envelope with Damon's company seal. Inside, in careful handwriting, Damon wrote that he'd appreciate one final opportunity to speak in person, away from cameras or meddling onlookers. "I owe you every apology and explanation," he concluded. "If you can find it in your heart, please meet me at the old diner where we used to share pancakes. 7 p.m. "Any evening you choose." Carmen, reading over her shoulder, nodded. "He's definitely persistent." Elena exhaled, her heart fluttering with anxiety. "I have questions he must answer once and for all." That evening, Elena selected a plain outfit, a simple white blouse, dark jeans and flats. No more glamorous dresses or illusions. She took a taxi to the small diner in her old neighborhood, the place where they once discovered common ground over midnight breakfasts. Her stomach roiled with nerves as she pushed open the creaky door, the familiar aroma of coffee and frying bacon washing over her. At a corner booth, Damon sat waiting. He wore a simple collared shirt, his usual arrogance replaced by a subdued tension. He rose immediately when he saw Elena, desperation flickering in his eyes. "Thank you for coming," he murmured. She slid into the booth, arms folded, avoiding direct eye contact. A waitress approached, and Elena asked for a coffee. "Black?" Damon ordered the same, then cleared his throat. I don't know where to start." Eleanor broke the silence, her voice quiet but firm. "Why did you do it, Damon? We were married. I trusted you. You humiliated me. And you did it in our home." Her words trembled, but her gaze was unwavering. He leaned forward, hands clasped. "Because I'm a coward," he said, voice cracking. "I got sucked into Sienna's world of flattery and excitement. I told myself it was harmless, a way to escape the pressures of my business. But it was never harmless. I see that now." Swallowing hard, he continued, "The wealth, the attention, it went to my head. I started thinking I could have whatever I wanted without consequence, but when I saw your face that day, I realized what I'd done. I betrayed the one person who loved me beyond my status." Elena's eyes stung. "Do you love her?" she asked bluntly, bracing herself. "Is that why you risked our marriage?" Damon shook his head vehemently. "No, it was lust, vanity, the thrill of something new, but I don't love her. Honestly, I don't think I even like her. She reminded me of a life where no one questions me, a fleeting excitement." He closed his eyes, exhaling a shaky breath. "I know sorry isn't enough, Elena, but I am sorry beyond words." A bitter smile tugged at her lips. "You expect me to believe a few regrets fix everything. My life has been torn apart." She stared at him, searching for sincerity. "What if I choose to leave you? Are you prepared for that?" He bowed his head. "If that's what you want, I won't fight you. But please, give me a chance to prove I'm not irredeemable. Let me at least help you, support your charities, show you I can be a better man." Elena sipped her coffee, silent for a long minute. The old diner bustled around them, orders shouted, utensils clanking. It felt surreal, this intimate confrontation in such an ordinary setting. Finally, she spoke. "I'm not making any promises. If you want to show me you've changed, you'll have to do it with actions. Don't contact me until you've started therapy or found a way to step back from your toxic lifestyle. If I see real effort, maybe we'll talk again." Damon nodded, tears brimming in his eyes. "I understand." As she stood to leave, he reached for her hand, but stopped, uncertain. Elena turned and walked out the door, the diner lights reflecting on her unshed tears. She felt a small sense of relief at laying bare her demands, and sorrow that it had come to this. The path ahead was far from certain, but at least she was no longer voiceless in her own story. In the following weeks, Damon surprised Eleanor by actually following through on her conditions. Through mutual acquaintances, she heard he had begun seeing a therapist specializing in marital issues and personal growth. He also delegated more responsibilities at Blackwood Enterprises, telling his board he needed time to refocus. Subtle shifts in the tabloid headlines reflected these changes. Damon, once a fixture at exclusive clubs, now absent from paparazzi snapshots of midnight parties. Elena, observing from afar, felt a swirl of complicated emotions. On one hand, relief that Damon seemed genuine about self-improvement. On the other, lingering resentment that it took a catastrophic betrayal for him to realize the emptiness of his pursuits. She occasionally thought of Sienna Tremont, now parading through fashion events. Gossip columns linked Sienna to other influential men, hardly hinting at Damon anymore. The city had moved on from their scandal, but Elena's heart still bore the scars. Carmen and Gabriel provided unwavering support. Carmen applauded Elena's boundary setting, encouraging her to continue focusing on her own personal growth. Elena decided to reapply for a master's program in social work, hoping to turn her volunteer passion into a career. Freed from the demands of high society appearances, she poured her energies into studying, brushing up on old academic references and forging new professional connections. Occasionally, Damon sent carefully worded letters describing his therapy progress. He admitted to confronting childhood issues, pressures from his family legacy, an internal fear of vulnerability. He confided that wealth had always been his shield, a means to ensure no one could reject him. Ironically, it had led him to sabotage genuine intimacy with Elena. At times, she found herself moved by his confessions, albeit uncertain if such revelations could truly heal the damage. One crisp autumn day, Eleanor agreed to meet Damon at a philanthropic event for a youth arts initiative in Brooklyn. She arrived early, wearing a simple outfit, hair pulled back in a low ponytail. Damon showed up soon after, looking different. No entourage, no designer flash, just a plain sweater and a quiet, respectful demeanor. His eyes lit with cautious hope when he saw her. They toured the event together, conversing with local artists, smiling at teenagers excitedly sharing their artwork. Damon donated a significant sum to the program, but did so without the usual fanfare or media presence. Elena noticed genuine engagement in his questions to the young participants. He seemed enthralled by their passion, praising their creativity. She watched from a short distance, torn between admiration and the memory of heartbreak. Afterward, they took a short walk through a nearby park. The hush of fallen leaves underfoot served as their soundtrack. Elena asked about Damon's therapy, how it felt to confront long-buried issues. His answers were thoughtful, no glib deflections. He offered no excuses for his affair, admitting it was entirely his failing. "All I can do is keep working to be better," he said softly, eyes on the horizon. A small part of Elena's heart, the part that once adored him, stirred. She recognized progress, yet the wound was still fresh enough that she held back. "Let's just keep it like this for a while," she murmured. "No big promises, no forcing a reunion. Let me watch you grow and we'll see." Damon nodded, relief mingling with acceptance. Their conversation ended with a gentle goodbye. For the first time, Eleanor left with a glimmer of cautious optimism. Maybe, just maybe, Damon wasn't beyond redemption. But she also knew she had found herself in this process, her dignity, her ambitions, and she refused to lose them again in the name of love. Weeks melted into months. Damon's transformation continued in tangible ways. He publicly announced a new scholarship fund aimed at helping youth from underprivileged backgrounds, an initiative reminiscent of Elena's core values. He quietly withdrew from high society clubs, focusing instead on smaller philanthropic gatherings and genuine corporate restructuring. Gossip columns, once swirling with scandal, moved on to fresh targets. Damon's name began to surface with respect for his philanthropic pivot rather than personal drama. Meanwhile, Eleanor thrived on her own path. She began attending evening classes for her master's in social work, forging friendships with like-minded peers. She balanced her time between Carmen's Place and occasional stays with her father. She felt an exhilarating sense of independence, no longer living in Damon's shadow, no longer reliant on his resources. Through her volunteer work, she connected with families whose stories resonated deeply. She discovered a newfound purpose that went beyond being just Mrs. Blackwood. Yet the question of her marriage loomed. Legally, they remained wed. Emotionally, they were in a suspended state. Damon's repeated apologies and consistent humility began chipping away at her protective walls. She saw that he was no longer the arrogant billionaire who believed he could get away with anything. Therapists often mention the concept of earning back trust through consistent actions over time, and Damon seemed to live by it daily, never pushing Elena for forgiveness, only demonstrating sincerity in every interaction. On a chilly evening, they met for dinner at a quaint bistro near the community center. Over candlelight, Damon recounted a small success. He'd convinced a few wealthy associates to co-fund an art program for youth. Elena congratulated him. The conversation felt light, almost reminiscent of their early courting days, but with a sobering undercurrent. They both knew the illusions of the past wouldn't suffice. As dessert arrived, Damon carefully reached across the table, gently taking Elena's hand. She let him, though her heartbeat quickened. In a soft tone, he said, "I know we can't just pick up where we left off, but I want you to know, I see you now, truly see you. The good we once shared, I believe it's still there if we nurture it. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes." Elena inhaled, tears glinting. "If we were to try again," she murmured, "it would mean starting over completely. No lies, no mistress in the shadows, and I will never give up my independence again. Do you understand?" He nodded, earnest. "I do. I want a partner, not a decoration. I was a fool to treat you otherwise." They finished dinner in a swirl of tentative hope. That night, Eleanor lay awake, grappling with her decision. She prayed for clarity, recalling how Damon had shattered her heart, but also how he was striving to piece his broken self back together. By dawn, she felt a certain peace settle. Life rarely offers easy paths or neat resolutions. Perhaps her heartbreak had forged a stronger version of herself, one who could choose to walk away or to rebuild, either way, holding her head high. Armed with this internal certainty, Elena resolved to see if their love, born once in naive optimism, could be reborn in truth. Whether it succeeded or failed, she would never again be the powerless woman overshadowed by Damon's wealth. She was Elena Martin Blackwood, a woman who discovered her own worth, and that knowledge would guide her next steps without fear. Spring arrived in Manhattan, bringing mild breezes and renewed vitality to the city. The time felt ripe for fresh beginnings. After months of cautious interactions, Eleanor and Damon reached a crossroads. The question of living arrangements loomed large. Carmen nudged Elena gently, saying her friend needed to decide whether to stand by the vow of marriage or finalize a separation. Damon, for his part, stepped back, letting Elena take the lead. He refused to pressure her, something that spoke volumes about how much he'd changed. Elena visited the penthouse one last time before making her choice. She walked through the grand foyer, her steps echoing against the marble floors. Dust motes swirled in the sunlight, but she no longer felt awe or intimidation. Instead, she recalled the night she found Damon with Sienna in the living room, the pain that twisted her soul. She also remembered the earlier times, gentle mornings, sipping coffee together, celebrating a charitable success, or quietly dancing to jazz in the half-lit lounge. The penthouse held memories of both wonder and sorrow. She realized that if she returned, it would have to be on her own terms. Damon awaited her on the balcony, overlooking the Manhattan skyline. He'd arranged a small table with a bouquet of her favorite flowers, white lilies. When she arrived, he smiled tentatively, gesturing for her to sit. The hush between them was thick with anticipation. "I wanted to show you something," he said softly, sliding a small folder across the table. Inside, Elena found documents outlining a trust fund in her name, designed to support any philanthropic initiatives she saw fit. "I don't want you to worry that reconciling means losing your independence," Damon explained. "This fund is yours to administer for your community work or personal goals. No strings attached." She blinked back tears. His gesture felt like an apology for using money as leverage in the past. She recognized it as a thoughtful step, though she knew trust would take more than financial generosity. She set the folder aside, meeting his gaze. "This is kind of you, but what I need to know is if you can truly honor my boundaries, my freedom. If we try again, I won't be the docile wife overshadowed by your empire." He nodded earnestly, tears shining. "Elena, I want a real partnership. I've learned that without love and respect, money is meaningless. I'm ready to do whatever it takes to rebuild what I broke." She reached for his hand, trembling slightly. For a moment she closed her eyes, recalling her father's advice, Carmen's unwavering support, the heartbreak of betrayal. Then, with a slow exhale, she said, "All right. We'll try to rebuild, but at a pace that respects my needs. We'll continue therapy, maintain separate finances if that's what keeps me secure. One misstep, Damon, just one, and I'm gone." Emotion choked his voice as he whispered, "I understand. Thank you for giving me this chance." They stood, stepping back into the penthouse that once symbolized their union. Now it felt like a blank slate awaiting a new narrative. Damon opened the large sliding doors, letting the spring air flood the living space. Elena stepped forward, noticing how the breeze carried the scent of fresh blossoms from a nearby park. The city spread out before them, both harsh and beautiful, a fitting metaphor for their marriage. Fragile, but perhaps still capable of blooming again if nourished with honesty, respect, and the humility Damon had finally embraced. Sometimes, the greatest heartbreak ignites the fiercest transformation. Elena Martin Blackwood discovered that beneath the glitter of a luxurious life lay the raw truth of betrayal. No material comfort could soothe her wounds when Damon introduced another woman into their sacred home. Yet, rather than surrender, Elena forged her own path, stepping away from wealth's empty promises and demanding the respect and honesty she deserved. Damon, jolted awake by the threat of losing her forever, confronted his deepest flaws and fought to rebuild what he had destroyed.
He was the dashing mogul every ambitious entrepreneur wanted to emulate. She was the poised, loyal wife who had stood by him from humble beginnings. No one would have guessed that behind the gated mansion's manicured lawns, betrayal festered like poison. Until one day, in a flurry of financial sabotage, he let his mistress cut off his wife's credit cards. It was humiliating, scandalous, and only the beginning of a whirlwind that would pit powerful business alliances against each other. In a boardroom confrontation that stunned everyone, the CEO himself stepped in, but not in the way anyone expected. Buckle up. This is the story of love, greed, and revenge. Jordan Alberts was not born into luxury. He grew up in a cramped one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Milwaukee, where he learned to hustle by selling candy bars door to door at the age of 10. Over the years, Jordan's unwavering determination and charm propelled him into better circles. First at a local startup, then into his own tech company that caught the eye of an angel investor. By the time he was 35, Jordan was a self-made millionaire, a prominent figure on various entrepreneurial boards, and had connections with people like Mark Cuban, Bill Gates, and a few top executives at Google. His wife, Elizabeth Alberts née Wagner, had been with him through everything. They met in college at a small tech entrepreneur club meeting, both bright-eyed and dreaming of changing the world. Elizabeth came from a modest background, too. Her father was a retired auto mechanic, and her mother a homemaker. She'd studied communications with an emphasis on public relations, and it was through Elizabeth's network of contacts that Jordan first gained access to small local pitch events. While Jordan pitched his innovative software for automating small business tasks, Elizabeth made calls, arranged coffee meetups, and tried to capture the interest of potential backers. They married in a little chapel by Lake Michigan. It wasn't a lavish wedding, no star-studded guest list, no fancy reception at the Ritz. But to Jordan and Elizabeth, it felt perfect. A union built on genuine love, unwavering support, and a shared dream of building a life and a business empire together. Over the next decade, they grew from a modest condominium in Milwaukee to a stunning estate in Austin near Lake Travis, with a sweeping view of the water and rolling Texas hills. It was there at a philanthropic event organized by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that Jordan's name landed on the radar of top-level investors. His company's smart automation technology was recognized for its potential to transform not just small businesses, but large-scale manufacturing and logistics. Soon after, Jordan's net worth skyrocketed from a mere $5 million to well over $200 million. For a while, everything was picture perfect. The marriage was strong, their personal synergy unwavering. Elizabeth handled some philanthropic duties, organizing events, acting as a goodwill ambassador for Jordan's brand, and forging new partnerships through her PR background. Their household staff adored them, describing Elizabeth as kind, gracious, and always mindful of the people around her. But money can be a seductive force, and success can open doors to darker temptations. Jordan began attending more exclusive networking events in Beverly Hills, New York, and beyond. Elizabeth was often at his side, but there were times she couldn't attend. Perhaps she was busy finalizing the details for a charity gala, or maybe she was simply burnt out from the unrelenting schedule. It was during these times, rare at first, then increasingly common, that Jordan got close to someone else. Her name was Ava Monroe. She was a rising star in the world of technology law, representing high-profile clients like Tesla, Amazon, and a few top-tier cryptocurrency exchanges. She had a reputation for being ruthless in negotiations, seductive in social gatherings, and unbelievably charming behind closed doors. The rumor mill started buzzing the moment Ava was seen at Jordan's table during a private dinner after a tech summit in Las Vegas. Elizabeth wasn't there. She had chosen to stay in Austin, meeting with a team of female entrepreneurs Jordan was mentoring. A few people whispered about Jordan's visible fascination with Ava, the way he leaned in whenever she spoke, how they clinked champagne flutes with an intimacy that suggested more than just business talk. No one knew for certain how fast or how deep it went, but soon the signs became undeniable. Lavish gifts appeared on Ava's social media, including a diamond bracelet, suspiciously similar to the ones Jordan's company had once gifted important clients. Photos emerged of Jordan and Ava at high-end restaurants in Manhattan, always carefully angled to obscure Jordan's face, though keen observers could still identify him by the sliver of a recognizable watch or the faint reflection in a mirrored wall. By the time the rumors reached Elizabeth, they were no longer rumors, but near-confirmed facts. She felt her chest tighten, her world spinning out of control. This couldn't be real. Jordan had always been a loyal partner. But the evidence was too compelling to deny. She confronted him in the privacy of their Lakeview mansion. At first, Jordan denied everything. Yet denial quickly turned into a half-hearted admission once Elizabeth presented him with photographic evidence, like a skilled negotiator used to controlling deals. Jordan tried to manipulate the situation, insisting that Ava was just a business associate, someone he occasionally had dinner with. But Elizabeth saw right through it. She had always been adept at reading him. A chill settled over their once loving home. Elizabeth, determined to preserve her dignity, demanded they enter marriage counseling, or at the very least step away from high-profile events until they resolved their issues in private. Jordan nodded, providing non-committal answers. He had never liked therapy, never seen the point in discussing feelings with a stranger. He agreed to her wishes on the surface, yet beneath the facade, he continued his involvement with Ava, allowing the illicit relationship to take root. This was the calm before the storm. For soon Elizabeth's sense of betrayal would pale in comparison to the massive financial and emotional blow about to come her way. Weeks passed. Elizabeth tried to focus on her philanthropic work and personal projects, attempting to distract herself from the growing chasm between her and Jordan. When a local charity she sponsored invited her to discuss future donations, Elizabeth discovered something shocking. Her personal credit card was declined. Embarrassment washed over her in front of the unsuspecting staff. She tried another card. Sure, it must have been a glitch, but that too was declined. The staff politely suggested she call her bank, and Elizabeth excused herself with a polite smile, her hands trembling as she left the office. Elizabeth called the bank suspecting fraud or an administrative error, but the bank's representative informed her that both cards had been cancelled the previous week. Under their joint account, they were tied to Jordan's finances, and evidently Jordan had authorized the cancellation. It felt like a punch to the gut. Why on earth would Jordan cancel her cards without her knowledge or consent? They had never had major financial disputes. Elizabeth always had access to family funds, albeit responsibly. She dialed Jordan, but the call went straight to voicemail. She sent him several frantic texts. No response. Later that evening, Jordan came home exuding an air of tired disinterest. Elizabeth confronted him the moment he walked through the door. Under the chandelier's glow, which reflected in her tear-filled eyes, Jordan brushed aside her questions with a dismissive wave. "I needed to consolidate our finances," he said, removing his blazer. "You can use the joint checking account for a while." "No big deal, no big deal." Elizabeth's frustration swelled. "You cancelled my credit cards without even telling me what's going on. Are you punishing me for something?" Jordan's eyes flicked away nervously, and that was when Elizabeth realized he was lying again. The next words that came from his mouth were not only shocking, but also laced with a cruelty she never imagined he was capable of. "Ava suggested we revisit some of my expenses. She found that you were spending frivolously. It made sense to limit credit usage." Elizabeth's heart dropped to her stomach. Ava. That woman was now meddling in their finances. As if the affair wasn't enough, Jordan had allowed this mistress to encroach into an arena that Elizabeth believed was sacred, her own household stability. "What is Ava doing reviewing my spending? Since when does your fling get to decide what is or isn't frivolous?" Elizabeth spat tears, threatening to spill. Jordan made an attempt at a calming gesture, but his words only fanned the flames. "She's helping me restructure. Her firm has great insights into corporate finances. This is about the business, Elizabeth. It's not personal." Not personal. Elizabeth recalled how intimately personal their marriage had always been. They built every aspect of their lives together, from small decisions about wallpaper colors to big entrepreneurial leaps that demanded everything from both of them. Now Jordan was shutting her out, consulting Ava instead. In a quavering voice, Elizabeth demanded, "Reinstate my cards. I am your wife. I have a right to our finances, and you know I've never been irresponsible with money." Jordan's face hardened with a new arrogance. "Not until we finalize our restructure," he said, referring to some nebulous plan Elizabeth knew little about. "I'll handle everything in the meantime." That moment, that cold exchange, was a harbinger of the bigger heartbreak to come. If Jordan was letting Ava control such details, what other aspects of their marriage was he willing to let her sabotage? As the days turned into weeks, Elizabeth discovered one more blow after another. The monthly allowance she used to cover household expenses had been slashed without explanation. The staff, including her personal assistant, was laid off. Bills began piling up, addressed to her name, but with no means to pay them aside from groveling at Jordan's feet. Friends and family started to notice. Elizabeth tried to hide her shame. She confided in her sister Caroline, who was enraged at Jordan. "This is financial abuse," Caroline insisted. "You should speak to a lawyer." Elizabeth shuddered at the thought. She still believed they could salvage their relationship, that Jordan would snap out of whatever daze Ava had put him in. Yet a small part of her whispered that maybe Caroline was right. Then came a fateful meeting at a hotel conference suite in Los Angeles, one that Jordan had insisted Elizabeth attend. It was a gathering of major tech moguls, including Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, who were rumored to be there to discuss new tech innovations in global logistics. When Elizabeth arrived, she quickly realized something was off. She saw Jordan in the lounge area, standing far too close to Ava, exchanging hushed conversations. Seeing Elizabeth from a distance, Jordan slipped away discreetly, leaving Ava behind. Elizabeth approached her husband with a forced smile. "I'm here," she said, desperate to maintain composure. "What's the plan?" Jordan gave a curt nod. "There's a closed-door session for the key players only. You'll have to wait outside." In the past, Elizabeth had always been included in these key player sessions as Jordan's partner and PR advisor. The subtle exclusion burned her pride. She swallowed her anger. "Sure, I can wait." After hours of waiting, she found Jordan and Ava laughing together near the bar. As she approached, Jordan's phone buzzed, and he stepped away. That was when Ava turned a chilling smirk on her face. "You know Jordan's a visionary," Ava said, swirling the wine in her glass. "He needs someone who can keep up with him on all levels: business, ambition, excitement." Elizabeth felt her face flush with anger. "I've been by his side for years. We built this together." Ava gave a theatrical shrug. "Maybe in the past. But times change. People evolve. I guess you were too comfortable." Elizabeth clenched her fists, biting back a retort. She was determined not to make a scene in front of such influential people. But oh, how she wanted to lash out, to expose Ava for the home wrecker she was. Ava flicked her hair behind her shoulder, noticing Elizabeth's agitation. "Things will be better if you accept it," she cooed, as if offering advice to a friend. Jordan's moved on in more ways than one. The finances are just the beginning. Elizabeth's body went cold. She realized in that moment how truly precarious her situation was. Ava was not simply a fling. She was positioning herself as a partner in Jordan's professional and personal life. The credit cards were just one step in what looked like a systematic campaign to push Elizabeth out of everything she and Jordan had built. Still, Elizabeth refused to crumble. She left the event quietly, but her mind churned with rage and heartbreak. It was time for her to take action. She needed to protect herself, her assets, and her dignity. Little did she know that as she plotted her next move, Jordan and Ava were preparing a financial ambush that would push her to the brink. Only fate and an unexpected intervention by a certain CEO would alter the course of their twisted game. In the days after the Los Angeles conference, Elizabeth attempted to consult with attorneys. She picked up a referral from a friend who once worked with a high-profile divorce lawyer in New York. The initial phone calls were sobering, with Jordan's empire being primarily under his name and her credit cards cancelled. She had limited liquidity to hire top-tier representation. Even so, Elizabeth pressed forward. She managed to scrape together some funds from a personal savings account. Jordan had no access to money she had set aside from her early PR consulting days. It wasn't a large sum, but enough to secure a preliminary consultation. During that consultation, her lawyer, Michelle Liu, a bright and empathetic but hard-hitting attorney based in Houston, laid out the hard truth. Financial abuse and infidelity are serious grounds for divorce, Michelle said, scanning through Elizabeth's financial statements. But if Jordan's funneling money and assets into new accounts under his own name, or shifting resources to places you can't see, we need proof, and we need it fast. Elizabeth swallowed. She recounted Ava's involvement, how she was effectively orchestrating the restructuring. Michelle's pen scribbled quickly over a notepad. "You have a right to half of the marital assets, Elizabeth, but it looks like your husband is 2 steps ahead. We must move quickly." The plan was to gather evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing and file a court order to freeze marital assets, ensuring Elizabeth had a fair shot. But as they began drafting documents and rummaging through what records, Elizabeth had an avalanche of shocking details surfaced. Jordan wasn't merely cancelling credit cards. He was transferring stocks from their joint portfolio into an account under his newly formed trust. He had changed the authorized signatory details for a few of their properties, effectively locking Elizabeth out. He was also taking out lines of credit against certain properties, presumably to fund new ventures that, as Elizabeth suspected, involved Ava. The emotional strain weighed heavily on Elizabeth. She couldn't sleep, her appetite waned. Each day felt like standing at the center of a storm. Yet if she thought this was the worst of it, she was mistaken. One evening, after finalizing some documents with Michelle, Elizabeth returned to her mansion to find her keycard didn't work on the electronic locks. Pounding on the door, she shouted for the live-in staff if any were left. Seconds later, the door opened slightly, revealing Ava's face. "Jordan's not here," Ava said icily. "You should call next time." Elizabeth's heart hammered. "This is my home. Get out of my way," she demanded, trying to push past. But Ava slid in front of her, refusing to budge. "He told me you're not welcome here anymore until the legal mess is settled." Ava sneered. "I have every right to ask you to leave." Elizabeth was trembling with fury. "You have no rights here. You're the mistress, not the wife." With a cold laugh, Ava stepped aside and pointed at Elizabeth's luggage haphazardly placed in the foyer. "Jordan left these for you," she said. "He said to pack whatever else you need and let security escort you out if you refuse to leave." Elizabeth blinked away tears, her throat raw with outrage. She was being thrown out of her own home by the woman who had intruded into her marriage. That moment was a cruel epiphany. Jordan had not only cut off her finances, but now he was physically pushing her out of the place she had shared with him for years. Yet in all that darkness, a sliver of light emerged the next morning. Elizabeth received a phone call from a close mutual friend, Marcus O'Donnell, who worked with Jordan at a large tech conglomerate in Dallas. Marcus was someone Elizabeth trusted, an executive who had known Jordan since the early days. He had seen them build the company from the ground up. Elizabeth Marcus said, his tone urgent. "I don't know everything that's going on, but I heard from your staff that you've been locked out. There's a board meeting next week. Jordan wants to finalize some big decisions. If you can get to that meeting and talk to the chairman, maybe you can find some leverage." Elizabeth's breath caught in her chest. The chairman of this particular conglomerate was none other than famed CEO David Hartridge, known not just for his visionary leadership, but also for a strict code of ethics. Over the years, Hartridge had invested heavily in Jordan's business. He was the reason Jordan sat on that board. He's not the type to meddle in personal affairs, Marcus warned. But if Jordan's pulling stunts that compromise your share in the company, Hartridge might step in. He's big on fairness and hates scandal. It was the glimmer of hope Elizabeth needed. She thanked Marcus profusely. The plan was simple: attend the board meeting, confront Jordan in front of Hartridge, and present enough evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing to ensure the board and possibly the entire conglomerate would not stand for it. She spent the week gathering documents, bank statements, and text message screenshots that implicated Jordan in unscrupulous financial moves. Michelle Liu helped compile everything into a neat folder. "You need to be prepared for Jordan to lash out," Michelle warned. "He'll try to discredit you in front of the board." Elizabeth nodded her determination, overshadowing her fear. She practiced her speech, reciting it in the mirror of her modest hotel room, where she had temporarily moved. Heart pounding, she told herself that if there was ever a time to fight, it was now. Finally, the day of the board meeting arrived. Elizabeth dressed in a sleek black pantsuit that radiated confidence. She walked into the corporate skyscraper in downtown Dallas, her chin held high despite the knot in her stomach. She spotted Jordan in the corridor, flanked by Ava and a couple of the board members. As soon as he saw Elizabeth, his expression darkened. "You're not supposed to be here," Jordan said, trying to keep his voice low. Elizabeth raised her chin. "I'm still an investor in your company. I hold shares. So yes, I'm attending the board meeting." Ava stepped in with a condescending smile. "Don't make a scene, Elizabeth. This meeting is for serious stakeholders." "I am a serious stakeholder," Elizabeth retorted, voice steady. "I'm your wife, still legally, and I'm half of this empire's foundation." Behind them, a tall figure approached CEO David Hartridge himself, a man in his 50s with graying temples and a firm handshake. He regarded Elizabeth with polite curiosity. "Ms. Alberts, I presume?" Elizabeth nodded, handing over her invitation papers and a letter from her attorney, which stated that she possessed partial shares. Hartridge studied the documents, then gave a curt nod indicating she was allowed to attend. Jordan shot Elizabeth a glare that spoke volumes. You have no idea what you're getting into. But Elizabeth did. She was here to preserve her dignity, her livelihood, and the legacy she had helped build. The meeting commenced in a sleek conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Dallas skyline. The board members sat around a large mahogany table, exchanging pleasantries about the upcoming quarter's projections. Jordan made a short presentation on a new partnership with a logistics firm, highlighting expansions and new contracts. A few board members clapped. Then came time for open discussion. Elizabeth raised her hand, clearing her throat. "I'd like to address some concerns about the financial structuring Jordan is proposing." She began, her voice reverberating across the silent room. Jordan's face reddened. Ava, seated beside him, tried to intervene. "We should keep personal matters out of board discussions," she said. But Elizabeth pressed on, raising the folder of evidence. These changes aren't just personal, Elizabeth said. They could affect company stability. Jordan is funneling resources into a new trust, making questionable decisions without transparency. I have documents signed by him with references to Ms. Ava Monroe, demonstrating a conflict of interest that could potentially compromise investor trust. A hush fell over the room. Hartridge's brow creased. Jordan, is this true? Jordan stood, scrambling for composure. This is a personal matter. Elizabeth is overstepping her bounds. She's not. Hartridge replied, his voice sharp. If there's a conflict of interest that threatens the stability of our partnership, it's very much a board matter. Jordan's eyes darted between Hartridge and Elizabeth. For the first time, he seemed cornered, uncertain how to proceed. Ava shot Elizabeth a lethal glare, realizing that Elizabeth's boldness had forced the topic into official territory. The tension was palpable. Elizabeth's heart thumped so loudly, she was certain everyone could hear it. But she stood her ground. Continuing. I also discovered lines of credit being taken against marital properties to fund expansions. These expansions could be legitimate, but the details are obscured. I have reason to believe Ms. Monroe is manipulating these finances for her personal gain. Murmurs rippled through the board. A couple members exchanged uneasy glances. Even those who might have sided with Jordan seemed rattled by the magnitude of Elizabeth's accusations. Hartridge steepled his fingers, evaluating the situation. I propose we recess for 15 minutes. Jordan, Elizabeth, Miss Monroe, please step into my office. Jordan inhaled frustration etched across his features, but he couldn't refuse the CEO's request, not without causing a catastrophic scene. The three followed Hartridge into a glass-walled corner office, shutting the door behind them. In that tense, enclosed space, the real battle began. Elizabeth laid out her evidence on the polished table before Hartridge. Jordan tried to dismiss it all as a personal dispute, but Hartridge was no fool. He could see the potential for scandal, especially if a partner was using company infrastructure for personal vendettas. Throughout this heated exchange, Ava attempted to deflect blame. She portrayed herself as a legal advisor, merely suggesting financial moves, disclaiming any wrongdoing. But Elizabeth's carefully compiled documents suggested otherwise. Emails, text messages, and proposed legal documents bore Ava's digital fingerprints. Hartridge's expression darkened. Jordan, this is unacceptable. If these documents are authentic, you've put your personal entanglements ahead of corporate responsibility. I won't allow it under my leadership. Jordan's face went pale. He tried to protest, to label Elizabeth's claims as overblown, but Hartridge had already made up his mind. Until this is sorted out, Jordan, I'm placing your proposals on hold. We can't move forward with any major financial changes if they're under this sort of ethical cloud. Elizabeth felt a surge of relief, a faint vindication. While she hadn't resolved the core issue of Jordan's betrayal, at least the board wasn't letting him run roughshod over her financial future. But Jordan, cornered and embarrassed, lashed out in desperation. You can't shut me down like this. He snapped at Hartridge, voice tight with anger. I'm the one who made that original deal with your conglomerate. You need my innovation. Hartridge stood up, bristling at Jordan's tone. I'm the CEO, and you've just made me question your reliability and integrity. Watch yourself, Jordan. Ava stepped closer to Jordan, placing a hand on his arm to calm him, but he shrugged her off. You'll regret this, he warned Hartridge, then turned to Elizabeth. And you made a fool of me in front of everyone. Elizabeth clenched her fists, refusing to cower. "You did that to yourself," she said, voice trembling with both fear and resolve. Jordan stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Ava followed quickly, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Hartridge sighed, looking at Elizabeth, who was holding back tears. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention," Hartridge said. "I'm sorry about your personal struggles, but I have to protect the board's interests. If you need anything, contact my office. I'm not a family court judge, but I won't let Jordan drag the company down." With that, Elizabeth let out a shaky breath. She had achieved a small but crucial victory, yet she couldn't shake the nagging sense that Jordan, humiliated and cornered, was far from finished. She left the skyscraper, stepping out into the bright Dallas sun, uncertain, but determined. Little did she know this chapter was only the start of a far more explosive confrontation, one that would involve security teams, sudden betrayals, and a twist that would bring Jordan himself to his knees. Life outside the mansion was lonely, but Elizabeth was thankful for the reprieve from Ava's manipulations. She rented a small apartment near downtown Austin and used what funds she had left to secure her basic needs, while Michelle continued to press for a financial freeze on Jordan's assets. In the weeks following the tense board meeting, Jordan went surprisingly quiet. No more legal letters arrived. No more credit lines were sabotaged. He didn't attempt to contact Elizabeth, nor did Ava. Instead, it seemed as though they had retreated into some silent fortress, likely strategizing their next move. Elizabeth took advantage of the lull. She reconnected with old friends and mentors, explaining partially at least what she was going through. While many were shocked, they offered support in the form of references, moral encouragement, and occasional leads for a stable job or a business partnership. Despite the heartbreak, Elizabeth discovered a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just a passive bystander in Jordan's world. She had her own capabilities, her own strengths. Slowly, she started consulting for small tech firms, using her communications and PR background to help them craft compelling pitches. It wasn't a fortune, but it was honest work that reminded her she could stand on her own 2 feet. Then one evening, she received a phone call from an unknown number. A crisp, professional voice greeted her. "Hello, Elizabeth. This is Patricia Carlson. I'm an executive assistant at Tesla, working under Elon Musk's leadership team." Elizabeth's heart thudded. She had met Patricia briefly at a tech conference in Berlin 2 years ago, but they'd never exchanged more than pleasantries. "How can I help you?" Elizabeth asked, mind racing. Patricia hesitated. "I might have information relevant to your predicament with Jordan. Let's just say some of our legal divisions have been observing Ava Monroe for a while, and some red flags have come up." Red flags. Elizabeth's curiosity flared. "You're investigating her?" A slow exhale from the other end. "Our major concern is that she's potentially engaged in insider trading, or at least something that veers close to it. She's been known to manipulate powerful men to gain inside info on deals, especially around new technologies. We don't have direct evidence, but we do know that she's heavily involved in your husband's finances. We suspect she might be siphoning resources for her own agendas." Elizabeth's mind reeled. This was bigger than a domestic spat. Ava might be leveraging Jordan's resources and connections to stake her own claims in the tech world. That explained the sudden shifts in finances, the new trust accounts, and the lines of credit. Patricia continued. "We want to bring her down, but we need more information. You, Elizabeth, might be in a unique position to gather that." Elizabeth tapped her fingers on the kitchen counter. "Isn't that something your legal team handles?" A rueful laugh. Yes, but we need Jordan's direct involvement. We suspect he's unwittingly giving her access to confidential materials through corporate crossovers or joint ventures. If you can help us prove it, we can kill two birds with one stone, protect Tesla's proprietary data, and help you gain leverage in your divorce. Elizabeth considered the offer. It was risky. If Ava was truly up to something illegal, Elizabeth could expose herself to potential backlash, but the lure of finally getting the upper hand was strong. "I'll do what I can," Elizabeth replied cautiously. "But how do I communicate with you about this?" Patricia gave her a secure email address and instructions on how to encrypt files. "And one more thing," Elizabeth Patricia said, before hanging up. "People like Ava are cunning. She'll anticipate your every move. Don't trust phone lines or any device that Jordan has access to. Be careful." Elizabeth thanked her and ended the call. Adrenaline coursing through her. For the next few days, she scoured her digital archives for anything that might hint at insider information. Jordan's old emails messages about collaborations with major tech companies like Tesla or Amazon, documents that Ava might have manipulated anything that showed a trail of questionable activity. She found a few suspicious threads, forwarded emails from Jordan's corporate account that were CC'd to Ava's personal address. Attachments relating to Tesla's project Next Gen battery were among them, though none of this was strictly proof of wrongdoing yet. Elizabeth compiled what she could and sent them to the secure email Patricia provided. In response, Patricia confirmed that these were valuable leads, but incomplete. "Keep digging," she urged, "and let me know if you get direct evidence of deals or monetary gains tied to these inside details." Meanwhile, Michelle Elizabeth's lawyer was preparing for a preliminary hearing to freeze some of Jordan's assets. She insisted Elizabeth come to court to testify about the financial abuse and the suspicious activities they had uncovered. But Jordan's side surprised them by agreeing to a partial freeze without argument. "That's strange," Michelle said, tapping a pen against the conference table. "Why would he agree so easily?" Elizabeth shrugged, perplexed. "Maybe he realizes fighting me will look bad in front of the board." But Michelle wasn't convinced. "I suspect he's preparing a bigger move. Be vigilant. He may have more leverage than we know." The next morning, Elizabeth received an unsolicited text from Jordan. "We need to talk, face to face." She felt a swirl of conflicting emotions: anger, sorrow, curiosity. But she knew she had to tread carefully. She agreed to meet him in a public place, a cafe near the courthouse, where she could keep the upper hand. When Jordan arrived, he looked tired, as though the weight of his troubles had worn him down. He offered a half smile, which Elizabeth did not return. "Liz?" He began using the old nickname he once uttered, with affection. Things got out of hand. She crossed her arms. "You think—" He sighed, scanning her face for warmth that was no longer there. "I want to settle this amicably. We can discuss spousal support, property divisions, everything. No need for a long, nasty court battle." Elizabeth let the silence hover. She wasn't naive enough to believe him at face value. "Amicably? Are you telling me Ava is out of the picture?" Jordan's shoulders tensed. "This is about you and me, not her. Look, maybe I got carried away with Ava's advice. She's a brilliant attorney." "She's manipulative," Elizabeth cut in sharply. He brushed the point aside. "Regardless, I'm willing to compromise, but I need you to lay off this insider trading nonsense. It's reckless. You're endangering my reputation." Elizabeth realized then that Jordan knew she'd been snooping into his communications. Perhaps Tesla's legal inquiries had begun reverberating in his circle. She saw the fear in his eyes. He was worried, if not about losing her, then about losing his empire. "You made me the enemy," Elizabeth replied, in a hushed, trembling tone. "When you let your mistress cut off my cards and throw me out of my home." Jordan looked away, shame flickering on his face. "I didn't handle that well. But you have to understand the pressure I'm under with these deals." She waited, letting him squirm. Then he continued. "You'll get a fair share. I promise. I just need you to stop meddling in my professional affairs, especially with Tesla or any other major collaborators. You'll ruin me if you do." A bitter laugh escaped Elizabeth. She thought of all the times she had stood beside him, protecting him, representing him before powerful players, forging alliances that were crucial to his success. Now he was pleading for her, not to ruin him. The irony nearly choked her. Before she could respond, Jordan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and muttered a soft curse. "I have to go," he said, throwing some cash on the table for their untouched coffees. Elizabeth watched him leave a mixture of pity and disdain swirling in her stomach. It was obvious he was desperate, but was this a genuine attempt at reconciliation, or a ploy to keep her from uncovering more incriminating information about Ava? That question lingered as she returned to her apartment, drained. However, a new email from Patricia waited in her inbox. It contained an attachment, a partial timeline of suspicious trades linked to accounts rumored to be controlled by Ava Monroe. There were large bets placed on Tesla's stock ahead of public announcements. Gains in the tens of millions. This is huge, Elizabeth thought. If she connected these trades to emails or calls between Jordan and Ava, it could be the smoking gun. And while Elizabeth had no intention of going to the feds on her own, Tesla's legal team could bury Ava, and by extension, Jordan's complicity, if he was involved. Elizabeth clutched her phone, anxiety coursing through her. She was walking a razor's edge. One false step, and Jordan might retaliate more fiercely, or Ava might strike. But a successful strike against Ava could free Elizabeth from this entire ordeal, giving her the leverage to secure a fair divorce settlement, or even land Jordan in deeper trouble, depending on his role. She reached for her phone to text Patricia when it buzzed in her hand. A call from an unknown number again. Tentatively, Elizabeth answered. A man's voice greeted her calm and steady. "Hello, Ms. Alberts. My name is Gregory Shaw. I'm part of CEO David Hartridge's legal counsel. He asked me to follow up regarding the situation with your husband." Elizabeth's heart skipped. Hartridge's legal counsel. "We understand from Mr. Hartridge's conversation with you that there might be unethical or even illegal behavior in play," Gregory continued. "The board is concerned about potential liability if Jordan's personal dealings spill into our corporate structure. We can't risk another scandal. Mr. Hartridge would like to assist you discreetly." Elizabeth exhaled slowly. She was on the cusp of powerful alliances forming against Jordan and Ava, but the more people got involved, the more dangerous it felt. Gregory concluded, "We'll be in touch with your lawyer. If you have any crucial evidence, Mr. Hartridge suggests you keep it secure. He wants to avoid a public meltdown, but he's prepared to do what's necessary to protect the company's interests, and that includes supporting you in your legal disputes, if it comes to that." Hanging up. Elizabeth felt a measure of validation. The cracks in Jordan's seemingly untouchable world were growing. Perhaps justice would prevail. Yet as she prepared to finalize the next round of documents for Michelle, a gnawing worry kept her awake at night. Cornered animals are the most dangerous, and Jordan, though once gentle and loving, had shown he could be ruthless when threatened. She braced herself for the storm that was surely coming. The next time Elizabeth saw Jordan in person, it wasn't by chance or a carefully arranged meeting. It was at the headquarters of Hartridge's conglomerate in Dallas. A sudden emergency board session had been called to address urgent corporate matters, and Elizabeth, having been notified by Gregory Shaw, arrived prepared. She walked into the reception area, her heart pounding with anticipation. Michelle Liu had insisted on accompanying her, but at the last minute she was called to handle a crucial filing. Elizabeth went alone, relying on the moral support from Gregory and the knowledge that Hartridge wanted the truth on record. Jordan was already inside the boardroom with Ava, who paced like a clad tiger. When Elizabeth entered, they both snapped their heads in her direction. Ava's glare could have sliced glass. Jordan's face was inscrutable, tense, angry, but also tinged with fear. Hartridge arrived moments later, trailed by a few board members and legal advisors. He wasted no time in stating the purpose of the meeting. Allegations have come to my attention that Ms. Monroe has been engaging in stock trades leveraging proprietary information from Jordan's company and potentially from our own collaborations. We need to clarify the truth. Now. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Ava's jaw clenched. "This is preposterous," she began. "We demand to see your proof." Hartridge nodded to one of his advisors, who distributed printed documents, timelines of suspicious trades, tied to accounts flagged by Tesla's legal team, along with correspondences that Elizabeth and Patricia had pieced together. Jordan snatched a packet from the advisor. His eyes swept over the page's color, draining from his face. Ava's lips thinned, and for a moment Elizabeth could see the faintest flicker of panic in her eyes. Hartridge pinned them with a stern gaze. "Jordan, you've been a valuable partner. I don't want to see your personal life derail your professional standing, but this is bigger than your marriage. Insider trading is a federal crime. And if Ms. Monroe is using your business resources to pull this off, you're implicated." Ava recovered quickly. She placed a hand on Jordan's arm, her voice smooth. "This is a misunderstanding, David. Anyone can align stock trades with corporate announcements. It's called speculation." Elizabeth decided enough was enough. She stood. "Speculation is one thing, but forwarding private emails, entire business proposals, and preliminary press releases is not speculation. I've seen the messages. You're literally discussing the best times to execute trades based on announcements that hadn't been made public yet." Ava whirled on Elizabeth. "You have no legal standing to claim that. You're just a scorned wife trying to sabotage Jordan and me." Elizabeth's blood boiled. "We'll let the evidence speak. There are even time-stamped emails from Jordan's corporate account sent to your personal email, Ms. Monroe, discussing upcoming expansions and product launches. Then trades were executed in your name or trusts linked to you within hours." A hush followed. Jordan's hands shook slightly. He seemed torn between denial and guilt. After all, the evidence was damning. If he denied it outright, he'd appear foolish. But if he admitted his involvement, he risked criminal charges and the wrath of the board. Hartridge leaned forward, his voice firm. "Jordan, I need answers." "Were you aware of these trades?" Jordan stared at the table, words refusing to form. Finally, he managed, Ava said it was all above board, that it was just normal investing. Ava let out a short laugh, but it sounded hollow. "If you want to scapegoat me, Jordan, think carefully," she warned. "We made certain deals in your name as well. Your signatures are on plenty of documents." The entire boardroom seemed to hold its breath. Hartridge addressed one of his legal advisors. "Have we sent this to the SEC?" "Not yet," the advisor responded. "We wanted to confront them first." Jordan shot to his feet, panic etched on his face. "No need to escalate it. We can handle this internally. If I undo the trades, repay any gains, repay tens of millions of dollars," Hartridge asked. "And that would just be the tip of the iceberg if the SEC digs deeper. This is out of our hands if they launch a formal investigation." Elizabeth watched Jordan unravel. This was the man who had once been so composed, so unstoppable. Now he was cornered, sweat beading on his forehead. Ava, too, looked like a wild animal backed into a corner, eyes darting around the room. At that moment, a building security guard appeared at the door, knocking softly. "Mr. Hartridge, you asked for security on standby," he announced quietly. "Thank you," Hartridge replied, his tone like steel. "I believe we might need you." Ava's eyes flitted towards the door, then back to Hartridge. She adopted a pleading tone. "David, you know me. I've handled legal matters for some of the biggest players in the industry. I would never do anything to jeopardize your trust." Hartridge's face remained stony. "I trusted Jordan, not you. And this evidence suggests you're at the center of a major ethical breach. If you don't have a verifiable explanation for each of these trades and how you obtained insider information, I have no choice but to protect the company from liability." Suddenly, Jordan snapped. Fear twisted into anger, and he pointed a trembling finger at Elizabeth. "You did this. You ruined everything because you couldn't handle that I moved on." Elizabeth steadied her breathing, preparing to reply. But Hartridge cut in calm yet firm. "Don't blame her for your poor decisions. You let your personal affair become a corporate liability." Something in Jordan cracked. He lunged toward Elizabeth as if to grab her documents or her phone, an irrational move likely spurred by desperation. But he never made contact. In a blink, the security guard stepped forward and intercepted Jordan, gripping his arms. "Stand down, sir," the guard said, voice authoritative. Jordan struggled, but the guard was a solid wall of muscle. Ava shrieked. "Let him go." "This is a private matter." Hartridge shook his head, anger coloring his features. "You just attempted to assault someone in my boardroom. Security remove Mr. Alberts from the premises." Jordan's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't do that. I'm on the board." "Not anymore," Hartridge said grimly. "I can and I will. You're suspended pending an internal investigation. Once that concludes, we'll determine your status. Now go and take Ms. Monroe with you." A second guard stepped in, guiding Ava toward the door as she protested threatening lawsuits and defamation claims. But her words rang hollow, overshadowed by the looming specter of an SEC investigation. Elizabeth stood off to the side, stunned by how quickly it had escalated from a tension-filled meeting to an outright meltdown. As Jordan and Ava were led out, Jordan craned his neck to shout at her, "You'll pay for this, Elizabeth. Don't think you've won." But the threat carried little weight now. In that moment, Elizabeth felt the mixture of triumph and sorrow that comes with toppling a man she once loved. She hadn't wanted to see Jordan destroyed, only to protect herself and the life they had built together. But Jordan's actions and Ava's ambition had forced her hand. Hartridge dismissed the board members, soon after instructing his legal team to cooperate fully with any investigations. He turned to Elizabeth with a sympathetic frown. "I'm sorry you had to endure this, Miss Alberts. I assure you we'll handle it lawfully. Whatever personal or marital disputes remain, I hope you find closure." Elizabeth gave him a small nod. "Thank you. I appreciate your fairness." She gathered her documents and left the skyscraper, the bright Texas sun striking her face as she stepped onto the street. The entire drama replayed in her mind. He let his mistress cut off my cards, but the CEO called security on him. She thought a bitter yet satisfying sense of irony spreading in her chest. She wasn't naive enough to think it was over. Legal battles would continue, depositions would be taken, and the divorce was far from final. But in this pivotal moment, she had taken back her power, standing against the storm that Jordan and Ava had unleashed. And for the first time in months, Elizabeth felt a glimmer of hope that she might in the end be free from their tyranny. In the weeks that followed, word spread like wildfire. News outlets picked up on rumors of insider trading linked to a high-profile tech investor, hinting that a major name was under investigation. It didn't take long for the rumor mill to connect the dots to Jordan Alberts and his mysterious attorney-turned-partner, Ava Monroe. Elizabeth watched from the sidelines, inundated with calls and messages from acquaintances, reporters, and sometimes even old college classmates she hadn't spoken to in years. She ignored most of them, preferring to let the legal process unfold without adding fuel to the media frenzy. Jordan, under immense legal and financial pressure, attempted to strike a deal if Elizabeth agreed to keep quiet and not testify against him or Ava. Regarding insider trading, he would give her a generous divorce settlement. The settlement included alimony, a hefty lump sum, and properties that would secure her financial future. However, Elizabeth refused any agreement that required her to lie or withhold the truth if subpoenaed. Nonetheless, she allowed her lawyer Michelle to work out a fair settlement that didn't involve perjury. Eventually, Jordan capitulated, realizing he had to salvage what he could from the marriage and business meltdown. The final settlement granted Elizabeth a significant portion of the assets, the mansion by Lake Travis, ironically, and a sizable share of Jordan's original tech startup. Meanwhile, Ava disappeared from the public eye, her reputation in tatters. Rumors surfaced that she'd fled the country perhaps to avoid legal repercussions, while others suggested she was hiding out in some luxury villa, waiting for the storm to pass. Either way, her days of meddling in Jordan's finances seemed to be over. Elizabeth didn't celebrate Jordan's downfall. She quietly grieved the end of a marriage that had started in love and partnership, yet she also felt relief and a renewed sense of self. She returned to the Lake Travis mansion, deciding whether to keep it or sell. The sweeping views of the water brought back memories, some of which felt like knives to her heart, others that warmed her soul. She began a new chapter in her life, leveraging her PR skills to start a consultancy focused on helping women entrepreneurs navigate both business and personal challenges. She named it Phoenix Rose Consulting, symbolizing rebirth and resilience. To her surprise, she found more joy in championing other women than she ever did, standing behind Jordan at glitzy galas. She kept in touch with Patricia from Tesla, who occasionally updated her on the ongoing investigations. Whether Jordan faced criminal charges depended on further evidence. But at least for Elizabeth, the immediate threat to her assets and well-being had lifted. David Hartridge reached out, once inviting Elizabeth to a dinner with the board, presumably to mend fences. Elizabeth politely declined. She had no desire to relive the tension of board meetings or navigate corporate politics where her personal life became public fodder. She was grateful for Hartridge's stance, but preferred to build her future away from the chaos. In moments of solitude, Elizabeth reflected on the entire ordeal. She'd once believed that love, loyalty, and shared ambition could conquer anything. Yet she also realized that unchecked power and ego could corrode even the strongest of bonds. Jordan's betrayal had been a painful lesson, but it set her free to discover her own strengths and a life not tethered to someone else's rising star. Yes, heartbreak lingered, and healing was an ongoing process. But Elizabeth found herself waking each day with a sense of purpose. She'd gather with female founders at local co-working spaces, host workshops on media relations, and offer moral support to those feeling overshadowed by bigger players. Each time she saw a spark of confidence ignite in another woman's eyes, she felt her own sense of wholeness return. In time, Elizabeth would finalize the divorce, sign the deeds, and officially start over. A sense of calm settled within her, like the slow, tranquil waves on Lake Travis at dawn. Her story, the humiliating card cancellations, the public meltdown, the mistress's meddling, would become a cautionary tale, one she shared sparingly, only when it might help others. Despite the scars, Elizabeth refused to let bitterness define her. She chose growth empathy and a belief that with the right support, anyone can rise from the ashes more formidable than before. Just as Elizabeth thought she had reached stable ground, fate tossed her another curveball. A month after the settlement, Michelle called her urgently. "The feds want to depose you," she said. "They uncovered new evidence Jordan may be involved in deeper crimes, bribery, money laundering. Ava might have orchestrated a network." Elizabeth's stomach dropped. Jordan never mentioned anything like that. "They've found offshore transactions and documents with his signature," Michelle said grimly. 2 days later, Elizabeth sat in a stark federal office, flanked by Michelle and 2 serious agents. They questioned her about Jordan's finances, Ava's role, the card cancellations, and philanthropic events that may have masked backdoor deals. Elizabeth stuck to the facts. She neither speculated nor dramatized. One agent, impressed, said, "You've been very helpful, Ms. Alberts. This case is significant." She left emotionally drained but relieved. She hadn't been dragged down with Jordan, but the storm wasn't over. Whispers followed Jordan was hiding at a secluded ranch, dodging the press. Ava had vanished. More subpoenas were issued. An indictment loomed. Elizabeth stayed focused on her consultancy, channeling stress into helping other women navigate business pitfalls. Her story, once painful, became a symbol of warning and strength. Then came the headlines: Jordan Alberts indicted for insider trading, fraud, and obstruction. Ava was named but still missing. The scandal rocked the tech world. Elizabeth issued a single statement. "I'm saddened by Jordan's choices. I've cooperated fully with authorities and continue to rebuild my life." Eventually, Jordan pled guilty to a lesser charge, offering a tearful courtroom apology. Elizabeth watched from home, tears in her eyes, not from triumph, but quiet grief for the man she once loved. Still, she understood consequences had to follow actions. That night, beneath the soft moonlight over Lake Travis, Elizabeth allowed herself one last cry for the past that died and the hope still waiting ahead. Life has a way of testing our fortitude when we least expect it. Elizabeth Alberts began this journey as a devoted wife, only to see her world upended by betrayal and financial sabotage. Yet what she lost in illusions, she gained in unbreakable resilience. Standing up to powerful forces and calling out wrongdoing isn't easy, but it's sometimes the only way to protect your dignity and your future.